Welcome to the Coaches Show. I'm Darrin Joins, Williamson County Schools Athletic Director. Have a couple of special guests today. We've got head coach of Independence, Scott Stidham, head coach of Page High School, Charles Rathbone. Thank you for being here, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Tonight's WCTV Game of the Week. It's a non-region game, but it's a WCS game, so obviously it's a big deal here in Williamson County. Question, we'll start with you, Coach Rathbone. Do you like this type of game in basically week 9 for you, right before you play, let's be honest, one that's more important?
I do. I mean, last year playing them, and we were close, and it was a competitive game. I think that kind of flipped our season, because up until then we think we're good, but we really don't know. But then when you hang with an Indy, then you're pretty daggum good. So I mean, it's kind of a measuring stick for us.
How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I think it helps because next week's game is more important, but it gets our kids excited because we're playing another Wilco team. They know about Page. They know each other. I know how well they have done last year and how good they are this year seeing on film. So our kids are excited about playing.
Again, we're talking tonight's Independence at Page football game. A little different. Now, Coach Rathbone, I don't want to put you on the spot a little bit, but I'm going to. You've got Lincoln County next week. Independence has Ravenwood. I do think that's a little different in that, let's face it, you're probably going to take care of business next week, unless something weird happens.
You hope so. But there's been stranger things happen.
Sure.
You'd think the Titans would beat the Giants at the beginning of the year too, and they didn't. So I mean, it's and I think they're a better team. So I mean, it's. Ravenwood's a much better team than Lincoln County, obviously, but you still got to line up, play the games, and you try to get through those games without getting injuries and staying healthy and kind of building towards the playoff run, and that's hopefully what we'll be able to do. But we're still just worried about this game tonight, and we'll worry about Lincoln County next week.
Let me ask you this, Coach Rathbone, because I know you've been through this a little bit even this year. Sometimes, and I'm not saying Lincoln will be a patsy game, but sometimes when you play those games where you do sort of cruise, it seems like some of those things happen, the injuries, and I don't know why that is, but I don't know if it's a fluke, but it sort of seems that way to me.
Yeah, and it's all, and I think it's because, kind of like what Coach Stidham was saying, you get up to play the Wilco teams, and if you see a 1-9, 0-9 team, whatever coming in, you kind of let off the gas a little bit. Last year, I mean, they were 1-8 when we played them, and it was 28-0. And this year when we played Columbia, we struggled the first half. Spring Hill, we were up 14-6 at halftime. So we seem to let down. So that's another challenge for our players is to get up and play like you're capable of playing next week.
Coach Stidham, what about you guys playing a Page, which is obviously a great opponent, before you play, let's face it, a huge game? First place is on the line next week.
Well, we've talked all week, and I think every coach does. You want to be 1-0 this week, and you try not to let last week affect you. So we just want to play well, and like Coach said, getting out healthy is really important. But, we got to continue to improve and get better because we know we're playing a great team tonight. And if we're worried about next week, it'll be ugly tonight. So we know we've got to play really well and hopefully continue to improve so that we will be able to play well in the future and hopefully in the playoffs.
Let's talk a little game history. Last year, Independence wins in a shootout, 49-38, and Coach Rathbone even mentioned that even though it was a loss, it sort of propelled you into that postseason run, letting you know we think we're good, but we sort of proved it because Indy had a heck of a team. Maybe not record-wise, but they're 6A, they're in Williamson County. You put them anywhere else, they probably win 7-8 games. Before that, you hadn't played since 2012. Indy leads the overall series 4-1. Obviously, Coach Stidham wasn't here for most of those, and Coach Rathbone only the second time as head coach that you guys have played. So let me ask you this, Coach Rathbone. How did this game come about 2 years ago when you got each other on the schedule?
Well, I mean, I think all the Williamson County teams struggle to find opponents. So really we had a team that backed out on us, and Coach Blade, who was the coach at the time, was looking for a game. So we just kind of got together and just scheduled it. We were both open on this week, so we put it together.
Let me ask you this, Coach Stidham. Obviously, you had a really good team at South Gibson, had some great runs. But are you finding that being here, when you start talking about people about playing games, it's just a little bit different, isn't it? Nobody wants to play.
Yeah, that's very true. Everybody knows what the Wilco teams have. And being a 6A school with over 2,000 kids, it's hard to find schedules. But when you got a chance, the one thing I've found is, man, teams are so well coached around here. They got great players, but the coaching is outstanding. So a chance to play a team coached by Coach Rathbone and what they do, it's only going to make us better.
Yeah.
And so I'm enjoying going against good people because it's making our players better and hopefully our coaches also.
You know what's interesting, and Coach Melton says this too at Franklin, obviously they struggled. One win last year. I think they're much improved. Let's face it, they could end up with no wins. He and I were talking about scheduling next year, and he said, that's who we want to play. Mm-hmm. And I've heard you say that, Coach Stidham, that you've said, why would we get ready for a really tough game by something that doesn't let us know if we're good enough to play in those games?
No, absolutely. You don't want to get kids injured, and the physical part of football is something to definitely consider, but you only get better by playing great teams. And the schedule we have that Coach Blade made is we played great teams, and it's allowed us to win some close games against some teams that I feel like we're better prepared just because of the people we've played. And so tonight's going to be no different. We're playing a great football team tonight. We're excited about it.
Well, and obviously you have the same scheduling philosophy, Coach Rathbone. When you look at Fairview, you play that traditional rival. Obviously you're a bigger school, but it's a WCS team. You play Franklin. You add them to the schedule. You add Indy to the schedule. You obviously share that same philosophy.
Yeah, and it's fun playing the Williamson County teams. I do like going out and seeing what other communities have, and kind of spreading the Williamson County way. I enjoyed going to play Coffee County last year and some of those teams, and I've been around long enough in this area where I got a lot of coaching connections around other schools that I'm buddies with. So sometimes you just want to play a buddy and show them your program and see their program, and so it makes it hard. I mean, you got a lot of tough choices, and we're going to have to make those choices here coming in a couple of weeks too. So I mean, it's tough.
Let's talk about your previous game, which was 2 weeks ago. Fall break, and I'm assuming both of you, since we weren't in school, you're like, yes, I'm glad we had the week off. Trying to play a game and not having school would be maybe rough. But let me ask you this, in terms of timing, was it a good week to have a bye, Coach Stidham?
I think for us, it probably was playing our biggest rival. You're probably going to have a letdown that next week, especially not having school and just all the distractions. So for us, I think it worked out well. We practiced Monday because we had our last JV and freshman game. We practiced Tuesday morning, gave the kids the rest of the week off. So hopefully we healed up a little bit. Our kids came back, and hopefully we'll respond tonight and play really well.
Coach Rathbone, was it a good time for a break?
To heal up, yes. It's always a better time if you win. So when you don't win, you got a whole week there to just stew and watch that game over and over and over and look at the mistakes we made and things like that. And then, I'm no different. I've probably watched the Nolensville game probably 10 times all the way through just to look at what we could have done better and should have done better and where we didn't execute and things like that. So, I mean, in that aspect, it kind of rides on your nerves a little bit because you have to wait so long to play again. But yeah, I think it's a good week.
Let's talk about that game a little bit. Nolensville Page, 27-21 Nolensville in overtime. I'm biased in saying this. I thought it was the biggest game in the state in that particular week. It didn't disappoint in terms of the quality of the game. Obviously, you were looking to come out on the winning side. I think you'll meet again, though. I mean, I know there's a lot to be looked at. You're not worried about trying to play Nolensville again. But in my opinion, if everything goes like it should, you'll have another shot.
And I hope so. You always want to have a chance to play a team that beat you earlier. I think it's two very evenly matched teams that a little bit different but very similar. And I think they got some guys that can take it to the house. And I thought our defense played well enough to win. I think offensively we just kind of shot ourselves in the foot all night and didn't do what we were supposed to do. But ultimately we got to get through Indy and Lincoln, round 1, round 2, and maybe meeting round 3. So we got a lot of football left, and I'm excited to see what we do.
Coach, I noticed too, maybe you didn't think much about it, but I noticed you said this. We were talking at game day, it was a great atmosphere. You were up on stage talking, and I was talking about how big the game is, and you said, it's a big game. Obviously, it's a big game. It's a region game. It's Williamson County game. It's Nolensville. But we've played in bigger games than this. I thought that was pretty interesting that you said, and it's true, by the way.
Yeah.
I think to them, maybe, I'm not speaking for Nowensville, but maybe it was a little bigger for them than you. And I don't mean that in any disrespect at all, but you have been in a state championship.
Yeah, and they played in a couple of semifinals
Right.
too a couple of years ago, so they played in bigger games as well. I just think they were just so amped up for us. They have never beaten us, and we put them out to playoffs last year and those things, and they should have been. So hopefully that kind of plays to our advantage later on. It's hard to get up for a team that high twice and to execute to the level they did and things like that. So they played a good game. All the credit in the world to them. Hopefully we get another shot at them. They're the region champs, and every coach, every player should want a chance to knock off that region champion later on in the playoffs.
Well, and like you said, it's definitely no disrespect to their program. Been to a couple semis, but not a final in 5A. But certainly they're in the conversation this year. Like you, Coach Derrick, just doing a wonderful job. The WCTV game of the week that week was the border battle. Obviously a big game regardless of records. Independence versus Summit is a big-time game. Summit jumps out on you, Coach, 21-3. I was following that game on Twitter, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is a little bit surprising. But then you start 21-10 before the half. You get a safety. Then you score again. And if I'm not mistaken, you had gotten the lead by late in the third quarter.
Yeah, that's right. They got 3 big plays in the second quarter, and credit to them. They played really well. And they've got some kids that can run. When you miss tackles, bad things happen defensively. So, but I'm proud of our kids. We just kept fighting and kept scratching and clawing, and we just kind of told our kids, you can't come back. There's no 21-point play we can all of a sudden get. So we just got to keep playing. We fumbled right before the safety, and so that safety was really big because we were about to score. Had a fumble exchange from the center. But because of that, they were backed up, and we were able to get a safety, and that gave them some momentum. I thought we played really well defensively other than those 3 plays, and we just didn't finish some drives, and finally, we did and moved the ball well, and finally we were able to punch it in and score when we needed to.
I'm just wondering, Coach, who was this game at South Gibson?
There was, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but no, we played, Milan was our big rival at South Gibson.
How did it compare feeling-wise to this one? Similar?
It was similar as far as playing, you really want to win the game, but the atmospheres, you can't compare them. My youngest son playing at MTSU, he had a bye week, so he had some friends come from South Gibson. All they talked about, wow. They talked about our student section, just the atmosphere. It's a different level here, and it's fun to coach in it and be a part of.
One more question about that game, Coach. You were favored. You end up having to come back to win it, but in a way, even though, again, you were favored to win it, the comeback, now that it's over, has to give you confidence.
I think so, and that's every game we've played against Williamson County teams has come down to 1 score and been a fourth quarter game, so I think it does give our kids confidence. The problem is if you give those too many times, they're hard to come back. You're playing with fire. So, but our kids definitely were excited and understood that we told them all week, and they knew we were playing a good football team. Their just schedule's brutal too.
Yeah.
And so, Summit was well coached, played very well physically, got after us, and so it was just. Really excited for our kids. It wasn't like we felt bad after it. We knew we beat a good football team.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little region standings and outlook. Coach Rathbone, your region there in 5A. Nowensville 4-0. You're 3-1. Unless something really, really strange happens, you're going to finish 1-2. So how do you approach, from a region standpoint, this one and next week? Just a one game at a time. We've got an ultimate goal of being here. So every game matters regardless if it impacts the standings.
Yeah, ultimately in the standings, tonight's game don't impact a whole lot.
Right.
Really, next week's game, like you said, is important. But you play them all to win. You never play. I don't believe in playing to make a good showing or playing just for fun. I want to win. And you play to win, and you go and game plan for every game that way. So, we may cheat and start looking ahead and seeing who we may match up with in that first round of playoffs. But other than that, everything's the same. We treat this game and next week's game like every other game. We want to prepare the best we can and hopefully play well and execute and get after it on Friday night.
You know, and I think a lot of it, Coach Stidham, you on the show enough, you'll see I bring up some of the same subjects. I do think in your sport, it's maybe a tad easier to do because you've got 10 events. That's all you're guaranteed are these 10 games. So even, and I'm impressed by this, you take Summit with a win and Franklin with 0 wins. I think it's a little easier maybe because there's only 10 chances anyway in terms of having your team ready. Those guys are doing a great job having their teams ready. But if you play 25 games and you've got 3 wins, it starts getting really, really tough. So the nature of football, I do think what Coach Rathbone's talking about, it's kind of built in that you can sell that this is big. This is one of these 10 events that we guaranteed to have.
You know, you start in January, we'll start working for 10 games. And so you're not going to waste one. And the other thing that makes football more unique is it's so routine oriented. You play 1 game a week.
Right.
So Monday's Monday, Tuesday's Tuesday. You know, the preparation's the same. And coaches spend a lot of time and work really hard. And our kids don't want to waste one, no matter who it is. So it's probably good for us with a big region game next week to play someone that our kids are really excited about, that like Paige. So we're excited to play.
You know, Coach Rathbone, I think that's, and Coach Stidham talked about this, that's one of the things that's tough about football. Think about if you talk about off seasons, no one does more than football. It's just the nature of your sport. If you don't get in that weight room and do your thing, everybody does it. But in your sport, if you don't do it, there's no way you can compete. So I do think that part of it's maybe a tough sell. You're doing all this work for just 10 games. That's tough.
Well, but it's especially in Williamson County, it's 10 special games.
Sure.
You know, I mean, look at all the work to play in a Super Bowl or to play in a state championship. You know, everything's like that in Williamson County. Every week it's an important game, and it's the crowd's hyped and the student body's behind you, and you got game day, and of course you got all these other outlets and media coming wanting to be at the game and all this other stuff. So I mean, they crave that, and they want to be a part of that, and they want to be on the field. And even the ones that don't get to play a lot, you know, they're already planning their off season so they can find a way to get bigger and stronger and faster so they can be there next year. You know, so and that's a good thing, and that's a culture thing that Williamson County has that has really that kind of goes overlooked in a way. You know, they see the finished product, but they don't see the work that these kids put in from January on.
Well, I'd include the coaches in that too. Coaches, talk about your region standings, clear as mud. Franklin and Summit both 0-4 outside the playoff picture. We know who's going to make the playoffs. We just don't know where. So you got Brentwood, Centennial, Ravenwood, Indy, all at 3-1. Now you tell me, because you've probably looked. Is there a scenario where everybody could be first or fourth?
Yes, first, second, third, or fourth. So, because we've all beaten each other.
Right.
And so if you win, you get a home playoff game. If you lose, you're going to Memphis. And so you can't control whether you're first or second. But if you win, you're going to be first, second.
Now, you haven't had any
lose, you're
coaches
third or
say, look, Coach Stidham, since you're used to being around Memphis, why don't you just volunteer? Why don't you just volunteer to be 3 or 4?
we had to do it a lot. South Gibson head down there, and it's tough. But, you know, again, we got to worry about tonight, and then we'll worry about next week. But, you know, it's going to be a huge challenge. Tonight's going to be a huge challenge, and every week is. And that's what makes it fun.
I love it. Can't wait to see it. Coach, let's talk a little offense. Coach Rathbone. I thought with Max being out in the Nowensville game, and I know he's played well, Kaysen stepped up. He made some plays for you.
Yeah, Henry. He did. He caught a long pass on a blitz, and heard through it up there. And we went in with a little bit different strategy. We wanted to try to run the ball, keep their offense off the field. We came out in 2 tights, and we ran the ball well. And what I've learned over the years, the reason I like throwing the ball around is when you run the ball, if you make one mistake, you're behind the chains. Now you got to execute. You got to execute twice as many plays as you do if you throw the ball. So I think that hurt us a little bit, and that's on me. But I think Henry played well. I think the offensive defensive lines played really well. I really do think they played well. And we made some mistakes in the backfield that we got to get better from. But yeah, I was proud of Henry. I think McLean Copeland, who hasn't played a lot, returning punts and kickoffs. He also played receiver. He played really well, And so, we got some guys coming, and I've told everybody this all year. We're still a young team. Those guys are sophomores that we're talking about. And, we're going to have those mistakes. It just happened to get us on the wrong game.
You talk about your defense, and you did play well. I've watched both of you play a couple of times. And I thought that night you really played well defensively. And Hazard, who you love, young guy. But there were some people that maybe didn't know who he was. They knew after that night.
Yeah, I think they're all going to know who Hazard is and Ronan and those guys. And, of course, the other guy that played pretty well was Brendan Ains, another sophomore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the future's bright. We just we didn't have it that night. And, again, congratulations to Nolensville, but hopefully we get another shot.
Coach Stidham, for your team offensively, obviously you had a little change in quarterback, had some injuries, but a guy that you love. He's a football player. Brooks Sapone, it seems to me, especially the last 2 or 3, every game is his best game now. He's playing better every game.
Yeah, you know what stood out to me? So I came in January, and Brooks Sapone was on our basketball team. And he played free safety since his sophomore started. Well, he's on the basketball team. He wasn't in the rotation. But you'd watch him on the bench, and that was the most energetic guy out there. And that's hard to do. But that tells you who Brooks Sapone is. And he'd rather play free safety. And I've never asked him, but I know he would. But he knows right now, for the best of our football team, what we have, he has to play quarterback. And he's done a great job for us. And he's just a great young man.
He is. And you know what speaks to that too, Coach? I think it's even more special when you think about he's had a pretty prominent role on the football team. And now he goes to another sport and he doesn't. Mm-hmm. Let's face it, a lot of times those guys pout.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, I'm one of the dudes in this other sport, and I've got to sit. He's the opposite.
Yeah, and that tells you everything. That's a rarity to be like Brooks Sapone. It is, because he played. I mean, he was a starting free safety, a big-time football player, and then he's sitting on the bench on basketball. He doesn't pout. His body language was great. He brought energy to our basketball team that had a great season.
Do we need to talk to Coach Wilkins and get him on the floor? I mean, we need to have an intervention.
Can you do it before tonight's game?
Yeah, no.
I know Coach is watching. We're just messing with you, Coach. And then Trey Hartwell. Obviously, this is the guy that everybody knows about. Again, as the season progresses, you've talked about this. Coach Coleman, I remember he talked about this as well. As you get later in the season especially, you got to be able to run the ball.
Yeah, you do, and we're sure glad to have Trey with us. Our offensive line, we've had to throw pieces in there just with some kids banged up and being injured, but Trey continues to get better, and he's someone that we need to have a great game tonight to have a chance. But his running has helped Brooks, because some teams are adding people into the box, and then Brooks is able to throw to Daniel Morales and Steele Katina and Hudson Cobb and those guys. So Trey is really important to us, and we need him to play really well tonight.
And I really like Trey. He has a special place in my heart. I know we don't have a lot of time, but a couple of years ago, my youngest son, he's 11 years old, and we started him in some fitness, and we started training him with this guy. Well, Trey also trains with this fitness guy, and Trey who's if you know Trey, I mean, he's just cut up and ripped, and he's a dude. So, I mean, he took Jake under his wing and kind of helped him. And, that, to me, it just says a lot when you have a 14, 15-year-old kid that's willing to take an 11-year-old or 12-year-old and help him a lot. So he's a special kid. I really like that young man.
That's a great story. And now Coach Stidham's going to go back and talk to Trey and say, Trey, what were you doing? This guy's going to hurt us. This guy's going to hurt us tonight.
That's right. He needs to pick somebody else we don't play.
Hey, let's talk a little defense. Coach Rathbone, and again, I know it was in a losing effort, but I've watched Nolensville a few times. You made them look more uncomfortable offensively than I've seen. So you have to be pleased what the defense did that.
Yeah, I think the defense played well all year other than one game. But, and I think a lot of that goes back on Hazard and Ronan and Jace Hoth and all those guys putting pressure on him up front. It's hard as a quarterback. I don't care how good you are. Tom Brady, if you're getting hit in the mouth, it's hard to stand in there and throw the ball and deliver it. And I do think Nolensville quarterback did a great job with it. But those guys up front played really well and put a lot of pressure on it. And our coverage guys did what we asked them to do. And I was proud of our defense. I mean, they did a really, really good job. I mean, we gave up a couple plays, but against Nolensville, you're going to do that.
Absolutely. Coach Stidham, your game against Summit, and I know you talked about those 3 plays. They had 3 big plays. Mm-hmm. But do you take those plays out? Your defense, you had to be pleased with it.
Yeah.
I mean, they happened, right? But I mean, if you take those out.
They did, and it's all correctable, those 3 things. So we focused on those and worked on them. But, yeah, I thought we really did play really well. We forced 3 turnovers, and that's huge. We got a fumble recovery and then 2 interceptions, which were really big for us.
Coach Rathbone, we'll start with you here. Special teams, I know it's something that gets overlooked a lot, not amongst you guys, but probably the general fan base. We talk about the kicking games here. Obviously, the special teams is more than just kicking the ball. As the playoffs are getting closer, how are you feeling about that unit as a whole for you guys?
Well, last year every team started at the 40 because we couldn't kick the ball off, and this year our guys putting it down there around the 5-yard line, we're covering well. We got a punter that's doing a great job, and Gavin Rush. So our kicker, since Fairview, he missed those couple extra points, but he's been kind of money ever since. So, I'm happy with the special teams. I think they're coached up really well. Coach Emmons does a great job. So they're giving the effort. It's hard. That's the hardest position to get kids to play, to buy into special teams. But if you watch our guys, for the most part, they're hustling and running down the field and covering kicks and staying in their lanes and the little things you want them to do. So I'm happy with special teams. I'm excited to see, if we can pop one in the next couple of weeks.
How about your unit, Coach?
Well, first, coaches stand out. When you're playing a Wilco team, you just assume the kicker's putting it in the end zone. You just assume it's going to be on the 20. And our kid can't get it there yet. As a sophomore, Landrick Mask, he's getting better. And theirs doesn't either, but they cover so well. They're backed up. Every team's backed up. And so it's impressive. And both our punters are pretty good. Field position's going to be huge tonight. And so we're going to have to try to flip the field. We're excited. We have 2 sophomore. Andrew Bingham's been punting. But then you also got to have a snapper and a holder and all those things, and you got to protect it. There's a lot of times you have a kicker as a JV freshman that can make extra points, but can you find a snapper and a holder and kids that can block? And so it's something we spend a lot of time on because you win and lose a games a lot on special teams.
Listen, I'm a fast learner. I've learned this in the 4 years in this position, but I hear it from you guys as coaches. Line of scrimmage, offense and defense. Don't turn the ball over and flip the field when you need to flip it. Do those things and you're all right, right?
You got a shot, for sure.
We're on the right track.
I may come back as a football coach. I've got it down. Now give me some players, which we all need, right? Let's talk about tonight's game. Offensively, Coach, what are some keys for you tonight, Coach Rathbone?
Well, I think Colin's got to play well. We got to get him to where he's running the ball more. We got to control the line of scrimmage and continue to run the ball and control the game clock and keep their offense off the field. Their defense flies around. They fly to the ball. Their offense is balanced. They run the ball as well as they throw the ball. So, and the quarterback, I love the quarterback. So we just got to stay in our lanes and, play our assignments and do our reads and stay at home. And if they get a big play, we got to come back and play the next play, because that's part of the game. And I think if we can do those things, I think we'll be competitive.
Coach Stidham, what are you looking to improve upon as you head into your last region game next week? What are you hoping your offense can accomplish tonight?
Well, we've got to be able to block a really good, big defensive line, and we've got to be able to run the football. And that's what we're going to face next week, too. We saw Ravenwood and JV was the biggest team we saw there. So their Page is so big and physical, we've got to be able to respond to that and not get blown off the ball on either side of the ball. Because they're good. They're really, again, so well coached, which is fun to go against. But we've got to be able to match their physicality as best we can.
Coach Rathbone, talk about your defense. And you and I have talked about this, and we talked about it a little bit as a group off camera before the show. Talk about for your defense how the test is a little different playing a 6A team, especially in WCS.
Well, the pool that you pull from, you're going to get 2 or 3 or 4 more athletes. It's just kind of common sense type stuff. We get about 8 athletes per 100 kids. So, if you got 300 more kids, you're getting, 24 kids. Now, all of those are not going to be athletes, but, if you get 3 or 4 of those that are dudes, and, you got something. So just their depth and the zone read that they run it so well, and the athleticism that they have on the edges really worries me a little bit. And, we gotta stay healthy and not get banged up to where we're playing some of your younger guys against their guys. And if we have to do that, then we're going to be in trouble.
Let's talk about your defense, Coach Stidham. To me, now this is just me, just an old basketball coach, especially on the line, Page looks 6A to me.
Every bit. Every bit. They're special now, and they are physical and get after you, and they block to the whistle. They're a lot of fun to watch if you weren't playing them. But we're excited about it.
Well, looking forward to it, gentlemen. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. Looking forward to tonight's game.
Thank you.
We are too. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for joining us for the Coaches Show. We'll see you next time.